1 Peter 2, verse 21. For to this you have been called. To what have you been called? Well, it goes back to verse 20. Suffering for doing good, enduring unjust suffering. To this you've been called, because Christ also suffered for you, leaving you an example, so that you might follow in his steps. Couple of things to note here. What's the basis of our capacity to suffer unjustly? This verse gives us two things. The first is because Christ also suffered for you. The Greek preposition is huper. It's often rendered in English like hyper, H-Y-P-E-R, because the U, the upsilon, in Greek is often rendered with a Y. Well, that word often can mean on behalf of. And here I'm reminded, and we ought to be reminded, of Christ's substitutionary death on our behalf. He suffered on behalf of us. He suffered for us. So the fact that he suffered for me frees me from my own sin patterns, from my own self-protection, from my own self-idolatry, from my sense where shame can come in and I'm more concerned about the world thinks of me than what God thinks of me. So the first basis for my ability or your ability to be the kind of person that could endure unjust suffering is because Jesus died in your place. That's the first thing. The verse gives you another, though. He also suffered for you, leaving you an example so that you might follow in his steps. The first idea, because he suffered for you, enables the second, which is living as Christ lived, following his example. So the first thing we see is we died to sin because of Christ's death on our behalf for us. The second thing we see is we have then a responsibility to walk out the example of Jesus in such a way that we are willing to endure suffering that is unjust. Why? Well, because he did. Because he did. So his example sets up the paradigmatic example for you and I. So both the substitutionary nature of the gospel and the example of his endurance on the cross, both are to draw us to a place where we're willing to endure unjust suffering. May the Lord bless you today, and may he continue to work his mercy in each of your lives.